Hi, Islamic Dad here. If you enjoy this channel, please subscribe. It does help me out a lot. I'm gonna do a video on what I've heard called the empathy gap. I think that this is, at least to me, a very important issue. It can work at both a micro level with relationships, but also at a macro societal level also. And as I've ranted on in other videos, I'm utterly disgusted with the world in 2023, and I feel very out of place, very anachronistic. My values are very old school Gen X. So a lot of the stuff that is being blasted into my ears 24/7 about, healthy, I find incredibly toxic. The term that I use, and I don't know if anyone else uses it, is toxic individualism. And basically it's this idea that being self-centered is healthy, and that only caring about yourself, your needs, your wants, your perspective, that somehow that's healthy. And that if you care for others, are considerate, take, people into account, that somehow that's codependent or, unhealthy or something like that. And it's just, that's just not true. I mean, let's be honest, we all would have died out as a race, hundreds of thousands of years ago, if we were just like, nope, everyone for himself, and just went into Hunger Games mode. So, but anyways, getting back to this. So, one of the things that I've noticed with, say, 2023 is that a lot of this toxic individualism that is passed off as healthy can also be thrown into different categories. So say with philosophy, you have stoicism, and with psychology, you have behaviorism, which sadly a lot of the therapists that I've had in the past 5 years have kind of dug out of the grave and dragged back out. And both of them kind of advocate this idea of going out into the world and looking at people as basically robots, where you look at their actions and behavior, the end. You don't care what they're thinking. You don't care what they're feeling. You don't care what their motivations are. You don't care what their past background and experiences are. You don't worry about, their context historically or anything like that. You basically treat them as mindless robots that just basically don't have anything going on in their head. They're just kind of going through life bumping around, I don't know, like RC bumper cars or something. And again, I don't subscribe to that. I understand how it can be used, in certain situations when there's a practical reason for it, but it's not a good way, I think, to go out into the world and live your life. And so one of the things that the empathy gap is referring to is how when two people, especially in 2023, have differing, say, opinions on an issue, we, at a macro level, we're, within the U.S., probably the most polarized we've been since, I think, the Civil War. And at a micro level, we have soaring rates of loneliness, alienation. The dating world is just basically, in its death throes. I mean, if you look at Japan, if you look at China, you can see what the future holds for the U.S. in that respect. So it's just horrible all around. And a lot of it is this just this myopic perspective of going through life, just looking through this little tiny, whole monocle of just being like, okay, this is what's important to me, and that's all that matters. So stepping back, when in the olden days, you would say have marriage counseling or something, or you might have in the business world, you would have what used to be called conflict resolution or something like that. And in both cases, one of the starting points for the process was to hear the other person's side of the issue, and then if you have questions about understanding that issue, you would ask so that you get a full understanding. And then the teacher or the therapist would say, okay, now I want you to repeat back the other person's argument, their perspective. And so you would be required to say it. And the therapist or teacher might even say, okay, why is that position held? What life experiences may have led you to hold that perspective or that opinion? What is your motivation behind having that opinion or that perspective? And they would say for like the therapist, the therapist would do that for both people, so that both people, like say spouses or two people in a relationship, would fully understand the other person's perspective and understand where that's coming from and what they want and their motivations for holding that perspective. And so just to be clear, that is like step one. This is like ground level. Only after you fully understand the other person's position on an issue and where that's coming from and their motivations, only then can you have a discussion to find a solution, and hopefully a solution that works for both of you. And same place in the workplace environment. If you have a conflict that you need to resolve, you want to make sure that both parties are not going in there with their ears covered and their blinders on, that they actually understand the opposing perspective and where that's coming from. And so, again, it's like that old phrase we used to have, fight the problem, don't fight your partner. And that's gone. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. It's like in 2023, like that way of handling differences of opinion or conflict is just gone. And it's to the point now where in 2023, the mentality is, I don't want to know, or I shouldn't even say that. I don't care what your perspective is. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your experiences are. I don't care what your motivation is. I don't care what your wants, your needs, your dreams, your hopes are. All I care about is myself. And then we wonder why 2023 is so horrible on so many levels. And that is what this person was referring to as the empathy gap. Whereas in the past, there was a effort made to bridge that gap so that you would have empathy. You wouldn't, not just understand like their position, like say on paper, but understand where it's coming from. Again, their background, like what drove them to have that perspective? What are their experiences? What did they hope to achieve? Stuff like that. And in 2023, that's all gone. And I think that that is a large part of both the, macro societal problem of polarization, where you have, different sides. They don't care to understand the other side. They just don't. And same thing at, like, say, a micro level of, like, say, dating and relationships, where you have a lot of people saying, I don't care, what that person thinks, feels, wants, needs. And, it's just a bizarre world, because I know in the dating world, I don't think that Tinder, for instance, created this, but I think Tinder's a good symptom of this, where people are just like, I want sex, and I don't care about your background. I don't care about who you are as a person or anything like that. And I mean, and that's fine when it's understood on both ends, that that's like kind of the agreement. But I also think that it's very indicative of, like, where things are going as a society in 2023, where you have so many people just checking out of, say, the dating scene or relationships, where they just don't care. They're like, I don't want to know another person intimately. I don't want to know another person's hopes and dreams, their experiences, their life, their background. I don't want to know. I've got my cats, and I've got my Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and I've got rom-coms. So, anyways, I tying this back to narcissism. I think that this, again, is a good, it's a good test if you're in a relationship and you're kind of wondering whether or not your partner is a narcissist, or to what extent they are, is to sit down and see if they can emotionally connect with you regarding something that you guys may have differing opinions on. So narcissists are, they're sneaky, and they have what's called cognitive empathy, meaning if they understand a situation, they understand how they're supposed to act, or basically how society thinks they should act, and they'll do it. But if you're in a one-on-one situation and you're talking to them, see if there's any emotion and heartfelt empathy there. If there's something that you guys don't see eye to eye on, and just say, hey, please, share with me what you think I'm saying, or like what my perspective is. And just to give like a real life example, my covert narcissist ex-girlfriend, she couldn't do it. It's talk about a red flag that I totally ignored. Very early in the two of us getting together, she said, I cannot put myself in the shoes of other people. And there would be multiple times when we would have just fights, because I would say, hey, this is important to me. I need to have this in the relationship to feel healthy, loved, safe, secure. And she would get angry, because she would say, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand. And it was really, really basic stuff that anyone else on the planet would have understood and not even blinked an eye. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good test to use. And now that I think about it, it kind of reminds me of the if you've seen the movie Blade Runner, the test at the beginning of the movie that the detectives are running on the replicants, or to find the replicants. So yeah, maybe the narcissists are actually replicants for Blade Runner. I should make that video. That would be good. Anyways, I hope that this has been helpful, maybe even entertaining. Thanks.